Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of From Dusk Till Dawn, as well as the latest episode of Aftermath. Starting off with From Dusk Till Dawn, we had Freddy still kind of reeling over what went down last episode, killing Zamina. Still kind of hurts me that just went down. It's so unfair. They literally finally got together, and their story ends like that, and it sucks. We see him kind of, I was like, okay, so I guess he's just trying to drown himself in kind of type of situation where it's like you drown yourself in other things, drinking as well as being with someone else, just so he can kind of forget about it. I mean, because not only is she dead, but it's also she died by his hand, but obviously more so than anyone, he blames Richie, because it's like Richie's the one that kind of forced him to do it, but he felt it, and he's the one that did it, but he just couldn't stop himself from doing it. He was kind of conscious, he was aware of what he was doing, and he felt himself doing it, but he just couldn't stop it. So Bert, interestingly enough, is the one because Bert's trying to basically get them to all come together to fight in this, because at this point in time they can't be divided, because that divided they fall. And essentially, Bert kind of brings up the fact of the matter is that him and Zamina had their past or whatever, still never really went into full detail about it. But once again, it's like even if he lost her, like I said, you saw it last episode that it kind of hit him, but it doesn't hit him nearly as hard as it hit Freddy. Even though he's known her longer, that their relationship existed way before Freddy was even, in his words, Freddy was even a sparkle in his great-grandfather's eye or something like that. But for Freddy, like I said, he was the one that actually did it, so that's why it hits him harder. We got introduced to like this cult that basically serves kind of Amaru. They kind of worship her. Well, they worship Itzba, who's basically Amaru's soul collector. So basically it's just a cult that's of culebras that's like recognizing her as the true queen, and basically they would scalp certain culebras with the bulb and blade so that they couldn't heal, and then serve them up for food for Amaru. Basically, the team took this opportunity to capture Amaru with special cuffs to kind of keep her bound and everything. Even went through the trouble of almost kind of basically doing an exorcism, which basically involved stretching her limbs out. And she ended up saying some very profound things in this episode that I just kind of find very interesting. And that's that Seth is trying so hard to save Kate, because trying to prove to himself that he's not as much of a monster as Richie is. That he, because I guess on some level, Seth has kind of always kept himself clean, in a matter of the fact is that no matter what went down, like, Culebras or whatever, Richie being the way he is, I guarantee you, I guess even before Richie became a Culebra, he's still probably, like, on some level, he does think himself a little bit better than Richie, whether he'd actually admit it or not. I mean, because, like to say, you go, rewind to the whole Earl situation, it was Richie who pulled the trigger. Like, for Seth, it was all about getting a quick score, making all that money back in season 1. That's what it was all about, kind of like their Shangri-La. But it just obviously all fell apart. But on some level, I guess he always felt like he was not that bad of a guy. But Amaru kind of touches a sore spot. It's like, you think saving Kate will basically make you not see yourself as a monster that you are, but you are in fact a monster. And that's kind of hard to confront. Like, because the thing is, Seth isn't 100% a bad guy. I mean, compared to all the bad stuff, like Richie's done, like, he's done some bad stuff. But because even Amaru says it herself, it's like, Kate hates you. She blames you for everything, which is like, yeah, Seth played a part in that. Like, none of this would have happened to her if Seth had never kidnapped her. None of this, also, even if you didn't go that far back, if he had never abandoned her, she wouldn't have been in that whole situation with Scott, because he was so busy fighting his own demons, he couldn't be there to protect her. He was there, he was meant to look after her. I mean, it's because of you that her whole family situation got messed up. Her brother got turned into a Culebra, so they're not in touch, and she ended up having to kill her own dad. Like, if you had not kidnapped them, none of that would have happened. So it's like, even at the very least, he should have looked after her. But like I said, he was so caught up about the whole Richie thing being kind of, left behind by his own brother. It was a whole thing. So, and what makes it even worse is when Kate actually tells him herself, she's like, I don't forgive you. He even said, I'm sorry. And then you can see his heart kind of breaking, because he wanted her forgiveness out of anyone. Like, Seth didn't want things to go that route. He wanted her, he's like, kind of go our separate ways, and you go off and do you. I mean, just as much as she probably hates Richie, she also blames Seth too. And the sad thing is, Scott even gets blamed in this too because she went through hell and back. She did a lot. She pushed herself, did a lot of stuff to help out Scott, and basically it ended in like basically it was almost like she was giving them like she probably wants to give a middle finger to them all. Like I don't know, she was able to talk to Scott. The first episode he kind of got back. What was it, about episode 4 or whatever? Like she talked to him then when she kind of got a little control of Amaru. So it's like I don't know. Like no matter what, I guess he's still her brother, so she's gonna be willing to kind of let him skate on some things, not completely skate on everything, but it's like that's still her brother. Seth and Richie are just the assholes who kidnapped him. So I don't know. It's hard to say how she really feels anytime you're kind of wondering, is it really her? I mean, it sounds like it's really her. It's not like Amaru pretending because I don't know that she's even asking questions to Seth like, oh, why are you doing this to me? He's like, no, I'm doing all this because I'm trying to get her out of you, which is legitimate, the truth. I mean, granted, like Seth let his emotions kind of get the best of him, like her saying everything that's like, oh, you can't do anything without Richie. You're pathetic. You're too you can't even do anything on your own essentially. And he ended up pushing her too far and ended up hurting Kate. So and interestingly enough, it turns out that basically the whole like them capturing her thing was actually just all a ploy so that she can find out. Because I was wondering about it. I brought it up last episode. Like ever since the Shady Glen episode, I kept bringing up like what? Why isn't she going after Freddie's wife Margaret and their child Billy? And the reason why is because she didn't know where to exactly get to them, but that's what this whole thing was, a ploy to find out where they were. Because now, it didn't click in my head why, but now it makes sense. Because the whole point of Shady Glen was trying to find a pure one. I thought it was just a kid, but the reason why they took the mom too is because they need a mom and a child. And now Margaret and Billy are going to be the substitute, and just this whole thing was an elaborate plan to draw them in so they could get that information they needed. And sadly, Margaret and Billy ended up getting kidnapped at the end of the episode. I mean, it seems like Amaru's real plan in all of this is to get her original body back. Because Seth did bring up something that I do think is kind of true. Amaru is a little afraid of something, and that is Kate. Because the fact is, Kate shouldn't be where she is. She shouldn't be able to come out like the way she does. Amaru should have complete... Because she's even said it on multiple occasions, like she has control over Kate, but Kate still tends to pop up. So I think she wants to kind of get rid of Kate's body and get back in her own body because that way she can release her true power. Because now she's probably not even, maybe at best half her strength. So maybe getting back in her original body will restore her powers to full. Or maybe she just wants her real body back just because it's like she can't go into any other body. Now that she's in Kate, she's stuck in Kate's until she returns to her original body. Because it's like if it's that much of a hassle to be in Kate's body, why not switch to a different body? But I'm thinking that might be the case. Maybe she's stuck in it until she gets back to her original body. And I guess that's why Braza wasn't with her. Because who was it that brought it up? Richie brought that up. He was like, don't you think it's a little weird the fact that she doesn't have like her go-to bodyguard Braza with her? So obviously he's off doing something. It must be connected to that, but I think Kate ended up proving more of a nuisance than Amaru was originally thinking. So I don't know, but that's talking about that. Let's also talk about kind of the main Zabalban we got to experience this episode, and that was Itzba, who is basically a woman at the dawn of time, like kind of like around the dawn of time or something, who fell in love with a man. He lied, cheated on her, and killed their firstborn. And so basically she has a problem with all men, and she ends up, killing them by using her claws, which are poisonous. And once she scratches you, like your kind of worst weird fears, your worst fears kind of attack you. You kind of have seizures and just kind of, like, for instance, in Freddy's case, when he got scratched, we saw a little flashback of, like, when he got kicked out. Like, Margaret's like, oh, no, our child's not going to be safe around you, so get out. I need you to leave. So, and for Scott, it was killing his bandmate with the guitar, as well as the whole situation with Kate. And what I found even more interesting is we end up finding out that Itzba is actually the woman that was making out with, that Freddy kind of hooked up with at the beginning of it. I thought that was kind of interesting. Like, I was wondering why she knew so much. It's like, there's so much there. Like, why are you knowing all these details? It's like, did he really let all that slip no matter how drunk he is? But I feel like, Freddy wouldn't let anything like that slip because it's kind of like she kind of pried it out of him, seduced it out of him. And he was like, well, what's the whole point of seducing me? She's like, basically, it makes it that much easier to destroy a man or something. And I don't know, I'm a little sad because it was kind of like the companionship and comfort he needed at that time, and it's like, oh, it was all part of the plan and everything, so that sucks. What's really messed up is how brutally Bert and him ended up killing her. They ended like just like stabbing her repeatedly. That was like, holy crap, that's pretty brutal. Even Richie was like, oh, you guys okay? Because it seems like even Bert was scratched by her in the past. He still had some old wounds. Now, what I was trying to, I kind of like took it as, and maybe that's not the way to take it. It's the fact that Bert kind of gets high all the time. It's because he's always constantly dealing with the pain that because she caused him like lots of pain. Like she scratched him, so he's always kind of reliving stuff because he's like he lost a lot of people on the battlefield when he originally went against Amaru and then back in the day, and just kind of reliving all of that. And it seems like the scars were there, so obviously they never went away. So maybe he was just always in constant pain. They were always coming, but he always kind of got high to kind of ease his pain and ease his mind about it. Because the moment she was dead, like the scars disappear, so it goes along with the pain, the seizures, the memories, the stuff, everything. So maybe this entire time he's had to deal with that. I mean, like Bert is still a bit of an enigma because we still don't know much about him. It might never really get an answer 100% about him because, like I said, the Nine Lords are an example of that. You got to know next to nothing about them. You still know stuff about them from the original world. Even you take someone like Mavado, like you never really learned much about him. Learned about his and Kisa's past a little bit, how he chose her and stuff like that. But like him as a person, like some of the stuff he went through, you didn't learn anything like that. So a lot of the villains, I feel like in the show, gotta stay enigmas that you kind of learn a little bit about their past, but not a lot. I mean, I'm guessing the bit about Amaru's past that we figured out. I mean, we found out about how she got the way she was, how she ended up in the blood well and stuff like that. That might be all we ever get about her. And interestingly enough, like I said, like there were like 2 points in this show episode that actually kind of made me jump a little bit. Like I don't know, like it's just like I said, I have to bring it up every episode. That very like horror movie-esque, especially the situation where Margaret's kind of tiptoeing through the house when Ichiba was coming to get them. And you kind of hear like a sound, and it literally made me jump. I was like, holy shit, I can't believe that scared me. Because it's not necessarily a scary show. It's a very eerie, dark and kind of eerie show, but still. And also, like, I have to bring up, like, kind of go back to something extremely lighthearted. It's a freaking joke, Tanner. It's like, so who are you? Mr. Normus. Dick E. Normus. It's like, okay, Mr. Overcompensation. I was thinking about it earlier, but I think I kind of didn't follow through on it. Was the whole thing about Richie in this episode? Basically, he's still connected to Amaru, but it's different. Like, at first I was thinking like, oh, did she still have some kind of control over him? But no, it's like basically they talk on a frequency, kind of like a telepathic frequency, and he's able to interject that. But he's even, at one point in the episode, he was able to kind of see through Amaru's eyes. And then he was able to hear the conversation between Itzba and Amaru when she was explaining like, okay, you've tracked down the mother and child, go get him. And then he ended up figuring it out. So I'm very curious to see where that goes from here on out, whether that would, be something. I mean, obviously it's a key thing that I'm sure he's going to be using pretty frequently to finally kind of track down Amaru. I am curious, like, how this whole situation with Amaru is going to go. Will they be able to get Kate back? Or will they just have to find a way to just put Amaru down just once and for all? I mean, they've had opportunities. They're like, oh, we could do this. But, for Seth's sake, it's like he doesn't want to because he's afraid that if he does, he's not, because he wants her forgiveness for everything that happened, for everything that pain he caused her. But she said she's not going to forgive him. And it's just like, you kind of want her to, but at the same time, it's like, has Seth done enough to kind of redeem himself for everything that's going down? I mean, he's done some stuff to redeem himself. Like I said, I don't know. Like amongst him and Richie, they've made some mistakes in the past, but they are rectifying it. They are fighting this war. And once again, I'll bring it up again in another episode. Where is Santanica? Was she not be in this at all? Like I said, the second episode of the season was like the only episode she's been in. Like she's still keeping her self out of this. I was like, because I was thinking about that when the season started. I was like, man, I wonder if Santanica going to be in this and all. Especially the way season 2 ended, made it seem like you might not see her at all. But I guess it was just that one part. I mean, still got a couple of episodes left until like we fully see whether she's in it or not. But I'm very curious to see how this will all play out. Because I thought Scott was underneath her control because you saw his eyes red and everything. But, you even had Ispa trying to talk to him, like, saying, like, she's going to take away the pain if he sets Amaru free. And then, like I said, she's like, oh, that's what family's for, and she left. So I don't know whether Scott's completely under her control or was it, like, a combination of the two, and it finally wore him and his mind down to the point Amaru could manipulate him. I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll just have to wait till next episode to find out, so... And now moving on to this week's episode of Aftermath. I just don't know what to say about this show. It is weird and crazy, and it gets weirder and crazier every episode. For one, you have the whole Brianna situation. She ends up on some commune, ranch, farm. Looks a little cultish, if you ask me, where you have... like, she can't even use the word but or killed or geez without kind of offending, what's the girl's name, Mary? The only person that seems to be okay with her is Devin. He's a little rigid. I did like the whole conversation. She's like, oh, you're not going to be weird, are you? He's like, no, I won't. I promise I won't be weird. She's like, geez, you're going to be totally be weird. The mom ended up taking her gun. Then she gets blamed for that monster lizard dragon looking thing that she saw. What was it like? Wasn't that the first or second episode where that thing picked up that, what was it, a horse or something, and ended up taking it away? That thing pops up again, and the lady there is blaming her and be like, oh, she summoned it, it's here for her, blah 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 blah. They have a very interesting perspective on it because they're kind of like, no, this is all kind of meant to happen. It's kind of like providence, essentially, that basically all this destruction and chaos will happen first and then order will be restored, kind of like cleansing the palate a little bit, if you want to kind of use that metaphor. End up meeting the guy, it's not till the very end of the episode we end up meeting the guy that's kind of running the whole thing, and it kind of get a weird air about him, and you have Brianna being like, please, dad, mom, come and get me now, just kind of like, kind of worried, because I don't even know where that's going to go. Like I said, the only person that's on her side there is Devin, because Devin's like, Mom, you guys are being crazy about this whole situation. There's no way she's not connected to this thing. He's, like I said, he seems the most normal out of anybody there. And then there's that whole situation. Dana getting bit by the dog, need to get shots and everything. And because they were talking about, oh yeah, 4 doses or whatever. I'm like, and they're like, poor Dana. I was like, what's the wrong with that? It's like, oh, because needles. And I'm not the biggest fan of needles, but I was like, as you can tell, she's definitely not the biggest fan of needles. But that whole store situation is what I really want to talk about, being like the kind of like that went down, like the whole situation, Dana Sally getting kidnapped. I mean, mainly, Karen and Sally kind of went back and forth on it, because Karen's kind of like, why did you get Dana? Why didn't you stop her? It's like, Dana wanted to help. She wanted to be useful. And it's just like guns were going, shots were going off. So, it's understandable for Sally not to have gone after her, especially because she thought, oh, she caught up with you or whatever. So, but, it's understandable why Dana wanted to do what she did too, because it's like, I guess she kind of felt tired of being protected. She wanted to kind of go help out and be, I guess, in her mind, useful, which, she shouldn't feel useless. It's a crazy situation that, you don't see Aunt Sally kind of waving around a gun, but it kind of seems like she's not a big fan of guns too. She's like, she even brings up the fact that it's kind of like, this is what happens when you kind of get a little gun crazy, something like that. But anyway, the situation, they capture her, and Karen wants to go in, but then Josh kind of talks her out of it. He's like, no, don't do this. I'll go in. I'm a little less threatening. You're more military, so you'll come off threatening. You're both military, so it'll kind of end in a gunfight. So basically, I'll go in, kind of catch them off guard and get, I'm less threatening. And he's like, don't worry, I'll get our daughter back. Like 3 seconds, walks back in. If I don't come back in 5 minutes, come get me. Love that. But in this episode, Josh really kicked up the like, wait, what? Like, meet her? I'm trying to say that as like the wait, what meter is what I was saying, but the way I spaced it out like that, it wasn't. I know I'm not making any sense. Sorry. But the whole situation, at first he's talking to him a little bit, and he's like, okay, you see this? Lights up a Molotov, and he's like, okay, I'm gonna drop this. I mean, if I dropped, you can try and shoot me, but if you shoot me, I'm gonna end up dropping this. I'm gonna basically not only burn the medicine that you're here for, the whole reason why you're coming after us, but I'm also gonna blow up this whole place because there's enough, stuff to kind of ignite in here. And they're like, you never do that. He's like, yeah, but I'm a dad, and like, I wouldn't know because basically if something happens to my little girl, I wouldn't know what to do. I wouldn't want to keep on living. So I'll be willing to take that chance. Like, even if I have to die, if it means taking you with me, I ain't going to live if I don't have my little girl. And it's like, oh, that's super sweet. And ends up convincing him to let her go, hand over the medicine. He's like, you know what, guys? I'm going to take this Molotov out. Let's have some drinks. Ends up giving some drinks. I'm like, okay. I was like, this is weird. Josh, like, what? You having drinks on now? And then I was like, okay. Did you do something to the drinks or something? Because you kind of saw the look on their faces. At first, I was like, oh, he did something to the drinks. I was like, maybe not, because he drunk some too. But then they all start convulsing and stuff like that. I was like, and you see the foaming up. My phone's like, oh, right, the cyanide he picked up earlier. And he's like, they're just dying. And I'm like, dude, Josh, that was amazing. Even went over to Dana. Dana's like, Dad, what'd you do? He's like, oh yeah, cyanide. And he kind of says it with a smile on his face. She's like, Dad, you killed them. They were going to let us go. And he's like, no. They weren't going to let us go. They were going to kill me. They're not going to kill you. They're not going to kill your mom and your Aunt Sally. So, basically, essentially, I killed them before they can kill us. And it seemed like they might be those type of people just because it's like, because they kind of seem like they might be the type of guys that's just like, oh yeah, we're having fun with you now. And then like after they got their drinks and enjoyed themselves. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they wouldn't have, but it's one of those situations, kind of like better safe than sorry type of situations. And maybe they probably would have thought the exact same thing. I mean, especially with the world being as chaotic as it is, it's kind of like a eat or be eaten type of world. So, I mean, I still think Josh made the right move, but I think it's very interesting. It's like, yeah, just don't tell your mom about this, and just like, what? I mean, I didn't know Josh had that side to him. Now, is that something just because it's like, oh, his fatherly instincts kicked in, or is it just because that's a side of Josh that we just haven't seen yet? That just kind of blew my mind. And then another final note in this episode is like, once again, the craziness is getting kicked up because you had that naked lady popping up at the house because Matt stayed behind to kind of look out for it just in case Brianna showed up because they don't know where Josh's dad / their grandpa is at. And there was the naked lady, and Matt was like, yo, what are you doing here? She's like, I'm hiding from my husband. He's very crazy. Like, I'm scared of him. I don't know what he's going to do. And the husband actually shows up and everything. And then Matt ends up shooting him. And then, something happens. I was like, okay, so what's going to happen is he's going to turn out to be a skinwalker. I was like, the way he's not acting like a fever head. It's like, okay, so maybe he's not a fever head, most likely a skinwalker. It seemed like his skin was turning blue or something. I was like, okay, it's about to come out. As he's falling, he turns on the liquid, and I'm like, wait, what? What the heck does that mean? And it's like, wait, so there's other things other than skinwalkers and that monster in the air. Look, I don't know how to make heads or tails of this show. I like that though, because it's like every episode is catching me on guard because it's like something new is being introduced. It's like a whole can of weird just got released on the earth. Because like I said, from initially I was thinking like, okay, this is some kind of like science fictional. I mean, well, not really science fictional. I took it as just like a supernatural thing. It's like, okay, I thought like people were being possessed by monsters. That's just what I originally got from the previews, which is technically true, but that only seems to be like a fraction of the problem. It seems like this is kind of be one of those shows where all supernatural things kind of run loose, and it's just a combination of kind of the end of days. I guess that's the whole point. It's supposed to be the end of days. It's like chaotic crap is happening. So I don't know how to take it, like, because even the lady he was saving, her name is Ella, right? And even she turned out to be something, like, because Matt turned around, she's like, turn around, close your eyes, and she's like, I can give you what you want most, and then she disappeared. He ended up basically asking his dad without, admitting what happened to him, because he didn't tell anybody about it. I guess mainly because if he had told them, they would have thought he was crazy. I mean, would anyone really believe that type of situation? Essentially, the word that, I don't know the name that's actually used to describe them, but basically, they're essentially sea goblins, and that basically they come on land, that basically they get close to you and they basically suck out your bones and drag him back into the sea. Just kind of like, and Josh jokingly talk about the fact that his dad used to always threaten him with stuff like that. And just Matt's kind of like, right. I don't know what to make heads or tails of what the hell is going on. It's always like, it's literally the end of the world. You see everything kind of falling apart, and it's just like, I was not expecting like kind of like a similar situation to From Dusk Till Dawn, just all these random monsters popping up like that. So I guess we're going to see more, especially considering apparently they have some kind of connection to Josh's dad, because basically there was some kind of thing on his desk that Ella was like, no, this isn't his. This is something he took. He gets the feeling like he possesses everything. So you don't think this is actually going to turn out to be like, yo, someone started all this. This isn't just some providence. This isn't just something that was meant to happen. It happened because someone caused it to happen. I mean, whatever the case may be, it seems like Josh's dad, their grandfather, is somewhere like in all this. Like, I mean, he's missing right now, but it's like, I don't know. Like, he has some kind of connection to this for Ella to be like, she knows him because the fact is he tries to possess everything. Maybe in some shape or form he tried to possess her or something, because she kept commenting on the fact is that Matt was kind of nice. I'm guessing saying in the opposite of his grandfather. And also one final note about all this is the missing people, all those different people that disappeared, like, because this is kind of where when Josh kind of told Karen, it's like, yeah, I don't think this is just a here thing. He's like, New York, all over the place, all these different places, a couple places around the U.S. because of the whole, because he was looking in the news van and kind of noticed that, like, oh, it was broadcasting from all these different places. So it's not just a town thing, which I was kind of wondering if that was the case. Was it just a town thing? Was it just kind of like, oh, this particular area thing? It's like, nope, it is kind of, at the very least, I'm thinking, I kind of had a feeling it was going to be a worldwide thing, but it's kind of, in this episode, we're kind of broadening it out, not just to be a city thing. It is kind of like spreading out. Whether it's completely worldwide, we don't really know yet, but I can only assume so. So, like I say, I just don't know how to make heads or tails of anything. I'm very intrigued. I'm very interested to see where everything ends up going next week and just maybe get some answers about it. But it seems like this will be one of those shows where it's just kind of like, crap is happening, accept it and move on. Enjoy the ride, but don't ask questions type of thing. So I don't know. We'll just have to see. But that's really all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.